The hidden dangers of being too nice that no one talks about. Have you ever been told you're too nice? Maybe you brushed it off as a compliment, or maybe you took it as a subtle insult. Either way, there's something lurking beneath that phrase, something deeper, more dangerous, and rarely discussed. We live in a world that praises kindness, preaches compassion, and tells us to turn the other cheek. And yet, when someone is too nice, there's an unease, a tension, a quiet warning in the tone. Why is that? What's really going on when being nice becomes a liability, not a virtue? That's the paradox we're going to unpack, the hidden dangers of being too nice, the ones no one talks about, not your parents, not your teachers, not even your best friends. But they're there, shaping your life in ways you may not even realize. Let's start with the philosophical dilemma. Niceness, on the surface, seems like an unshakable good. It's the lubricant of society, keeping relationships smooth, keeping conflict at bay, keeping us in each other's good graces. But philosophy teaches us to question the obvious, to poke at the things that seem universally true. So here's a question to sit with. What if being too nice isn't about kindness at all, but about fear? Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being seen for who we really are. Could it be that niceness in excess is actually a mask? A performance? A shield? Think about it. When you say yes to something you don't want to do, just to avoid disappointing someone, what is that really? Is it kindness, or is it self-erasure? When you stay silent in the face of something wrong, just to keep the peace, are you being nice, or are you being complicit? Niceness, when it becomes a habit, can slowly chip away at your authenticity. And before you know it, you're living a life curated to make others comfortable, rather than one that reflects your truth. This isn't just an emotional issue, it's an existential one. Sartre said, "Hell is other people, not because people are evil, but because we define ourselves through their eyes." When we're too nice, we become trapped in that gaze. Me, them. We become who others want us to be, not who we are. We confuse being liked with being loved. We confuse approval with meaning. And the more we do it, the more we lose touch with our real identity.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Here's what makes this so dangerous. The world rewards niceness superficially. But you get praised, you get invited, you're seen as agreeable, easygoing, pleasant. But underneath, something else is happening. Resentment builds, boundaries blur, people start to take advantage, sometimes knowingly, sometimes not. And you start to shrink. You lose your voice, your power, your sense of agency. You become a ghost in your own life, always present, but never fully seen. And still, the culture keeps reinforcing it. Especially for certain groups, women, for example, niceness is often equated with morality. Be nice, be polite, don't raise your voice, don't be difficult. It's not just a personality trait, it becomes a moral obligation. But morality without integrity is hollow, and niceness without truth is dangerous, because it enables the very things it claims to oppose. It allows injustice to persist. It allows manipulation to flourish. And it keeps powerful people unchallenged. Now, let's bring it down to the personal. Ask yourself, how many times have you said yes when you meant no? How many times have you smiled through discomfort, laughed at a joke that hurt, agreed with a plan that drained you, offered help when you were already drowning? How much of your life is built on pleasing others rather than honoring yourself? There's a concept in psychology called fawning. It's a trauma response alongside fight, flight, and freeze. Fawning is when we appease, when we become overly nice, overly accommodating, overly agreeable in order to feel safe. And while it may have helped us survive certain environments, strict families, toxic relationships, chaotic workplaces, it doesn't help us thrive. In fact, it can become a prison. A beautiful, well-decorated prison where everyone thinks you're fine because you're so nice, but deep down, you're tired. You're invisible. You're losing yourself. This is where we begin the real work. The journey out of compulsive niceness and into authentic kindness that includes you. Because kindness without self-respect isn't kindness, it's self-abandonment. And self-abandonment, over time, leads to a life that feels hollow, performative, disconnected. The kind of life where you wake up one day and wonder, who am I really, beneath all this smiling? We're just getting started. In the next part, we'll dive into the roots of this behavior, where it comes from, why it's so hard to break, and how society benefits from keeping you too nice. But for now, sit with this question: what would change if you believed your worth wasn't tied to how comfortable you make other people feel? The roots of self-erasure, why society rewards niceness over truth, to understand why being too nice becomes so dangerous. We have to trace its origins not just in our personal histories, but in the architecture of the world we live in. Being nice didn't just appear out of thin air. It was built into us, taught, enforced, and rewarded from the time we were children. And the deeper you look, the more you realize that niceness, when demanded rather than chosen, isn't about ethics or empathy. But it's about control. It's about making people predictable, manageable, agreeable. It's about shaping citizens who will comply, children who won't rebel, employees who won't question, and partners who won't leave. And when you start to see that, you begin to feel the weight of all the ways we've been trained to smile, even when we're dying inside. This training begins early. As children, we are taught that being good means being obedient, that challenging authority is disrespectful, that expressing anger is inappropriate, and that saying no is ungrateful. And so, over time, we learn to suppress. We learn to smile when we want to scream. We learn to say it's fine when it's not. We learn that peace is more valuable than truth. But is it really peace if it's built on silence? Is it really kindness if it demands your self-erasure? Society has a vested interest in our niceness, because people who are too nice don't rock the boat. They don't protest. They don't demand better. They don't say, this isn't okay, and that's incredibly convenient for systems of power. Whether it's a workplace that exploits your time, a relationship that drains your energy, or a culture that thrives on your silence, your niceness becomes the glue that holds dysfunction together. You become the one who absorbs the tension, smooths things over, keeps things running, even when you're breaking inside. There's a reason we call people difficult when they start setting boundaries. There's a reason we label assertiveness as arrogance, especially in women or marginalized communities. Because truth-telling is disruptive, and the world doesn't like to be disrupted. But here's the hard truth: niceness without truth is not virtue, it's compliance. And compliance, when it becomes a way of life, is a slow spiritual death. It keeps you in relationships that deplete you. It keeps you in jobs that undervalue you. It keeps you in roles that don't reflect who you are. This is not an argument against kindness. Kindness is sacred. But kindness without honesty is manipulation. It becomes a performance, not a gift. And over time, it fractures your sense of self. You become a mirror for other people's comfort instead of a vessel for your own truth. And the longer you do this, the harder it becomes to even remember what you want, what you believe, what you need. You lose the ability to access your own inner voice because it's been drowned out by the chorus of "you should be nice, don't make waves." This epidemic of self-erasure shows up everywhere. It's the friend who never says what she really thinks, the employee who never asks for a raise, the partner who quietly tolerates disrespect, the person who always shows up for others but has no one to call when they're falling apart. And society keeps praising them because their niceness makes life easier for everyone else. But who's making life easier for them? Ask yourself, what parts of yourself have you silenced just to be accepted? What truths have you buried just to be liked? What boundaries have you dissolved just to keep someone else comfortable? These questions are not meant to shame. They're meant to awaken, to remind you that your truth is not a threat, it's a compass. And every time you deny it, you drift further from the life you're meant to live. In the next part, we're going to explore how being too nice reshapes your identity and what it means to reclaim your inner authority without becoming cold or unkind. But before we go there, consider this. What would your life look like if you stopped prioritizing being nice and started prioritizing being real? The identity trap. How niceness steals your voice and rewrites who you are. There's a moment, quiet but terrifying, is when you realize you've become a character in your own life story, one carefully scripted to please others, avoid conflict, meet expectations, and maintain harmony at all costs. That's the moment when you begin to understand the true cost of being too nice. It's not just emotional exhaustion or lost time. It's identity. Being too nice, when it becomes habitual, doesn't just shape what you do, it reshapes who you are. Slowly, subtly, it rewrites the narrative of your life until you forget that you were ever the author. This is the identity trap. You start out with good intentions, wanting to help, to be loved, to keep people happy. But somewhere along the way, your niceness becomes the lens through which you're known. You become the reliable one, the peacemaker, the one who's always there. And at first, that feels good. You feel needed. You feel seen. But eventually you realize something's missing. You're known for how well you serve others, but not for who you truly are. Your identity becomes a reflection of what others need from you, not what lives inside you. The danger lies in how easily this trap masquerades as virtue. People love you for it. They praise your kindness, your patience, your humility. But what they're really praising is your predictability, your willingness to put their comfort above your truth. And the longer you wear that mask, the more invisible you become to yourself. You stop asking what you want. You forget what it feels like to choose something just because it aligns with your desires, not because it fulfills someone else's expectation. And then comes the dissonance. The quiet ache that follows you into every room, every conversation, every decision. It's the feeling of being surrounded by people who love the version of you that's always agreeable, always accommodating, but not necessarily the real you. Because the real you might have edges, might have needs, might have fire, and you've been taught that those parts make you less lovable. So you shrink. You smooth yourself out, you become palatable, and in doing so, you trade authenticity for acceptance. But here's the truth that no one tells you: you can't be fully loved if you're only partially known. If you're only showing up as the nice version of yourself, the agreeable, smiling, self-sacrificing version, then any love or approval you receive is conditional. It's love for the mask, not the person beneath it. Deep down, you know that. You feel the loneliness of being surrounded yet unseen. You feel the resentment building, not just toward others, but toward yourself for abandoning your own voice in exchange for approval. This identity erosion is not your fault. It's a survival strategy. In families where conflict was dangerous, being nice was how you stayed safe. In schools where conformity was rewarded, being nice got you praise. In workplaces where questioning authority was punished, being nice kept you employed. But what kept you safe then is now keeping you small. And the only way out is through radical self-honesty. Ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? What do you believe in, fight for, dream about when you're not filtering it through the lens of will they still like me? These questions aren't easy. They demand courage. Because claiming your true identity often comes with loss. Not everyone will like the unfiltered you. Some may pull away. Some relationships may shift. But what you lose in comfort, you gain in clarity. And clarity is freedom. Reclaiming your voice doesn't mean becoming cruel. It means becoming whole. It means saying no when you mean no. It means standing firm even when it makes others uncomfortable. But it means honoring your emotional truth even when it's messy or inconvenient. Because only then can you build a life that reflects who you are, not just who you've been trained to be. In the final part, we'll explore the path forward, how to break free from the identity of the nice one without losing your humanity, and how to build a life grounded in boundary, truth, and real connection. Until then, ask yourself, what would it feel like to be fully honest, even if it meant being less liked? The courage to be whole, reclaiming boundaries, voice and real connection, there is a moment often quiet, but sometimes terrifying, when you decide you're done being only what others want you to be. It doesn't come with applause. It usually comes with a deep internal shift, an ache, a whisper that says, I can't keep doing this. That's the moment when something breaks open. And in that opening you begin the slow, brave work of becoming whole. Not nice, not palatable, not endlessly agreeable, but real, and real is where life begins. Reclaiming your wholeness after a lifetime of being too nice isn't about swinging to the opposite extreme. It's not about turning cold or hard or indifferent. It's about integrating what's been left out. It's about bringing your voice, your boundaries, your anger, your needs, yes, even your needs, back into the room. Because being whole doesn't mean being perfect. It means being honest. And honesty is the birthplace of everything that matters: intimacy, purpose, freedom, love. But make no mistake, this path takes courage. Because the world is not always kind to people who stop performing. When you start saying no, some people will be offended. When you start speaking your truth, some will call you difficult. When you stop cushioning your words to protect other people's egos, you'll be told you've changed. And they'll be right. You have. You've stopped making yourself small so that others can feel big. You've stopped betraying yourself in the name of being nice. And maybe for the first time, you've started choosing you. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors. They don't keep people out, they let the right ones in. When you set a boundary, you're not being mean. You're being clear. You're saying, this is where I end and you begin. And in that clarity, real connection becomes possible. Because connection doesn't require you to disappear. It requires you to be seen, fully, imperfectly, humanly. And that kind of connection is rare, but it's worth everything. There's a myth that says if you stop being endlessly nice, you'll end up alone. But the truth is, when you stop performing, the wrong people will fade and the right ones will finally see you. Because real love can't find you if you're hiding. Real respect can't grow if you're always saying yes when your soul is screaming no. Real friendship can't thrive if it's based on your silence instead of your truth. So much of life's pain comes not from rejection, but from self-abandonment. And every time you choose to honor your truth, you stitch yourself back together. But here's the paradox: the more you embrace your wholeness, the more kindness you can offer, not from obligation, but from overflow. When you're no longer leaking energy trying to manage everyone else's emotions, you have more to give. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Not to be liked, but because you're living in alignment. That's the difference between performative niceness and embodied kindness. One drains you, the other fills you. So here's the invitation: be fierce with your boundaries and soft with your heart. Speak with honesty, not brutality. Offer compassion, but not at the expense of your soul. Let people be uncomfortable with your truth, because their comfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself to live in a way that is true and whole and free. Ask yourself now, at the end of all this, what would it mean to live a life where you no longer apologize for existing as you are? Not a life of defiance, but a life of sovereignty. A life where you no longer trade your truth for temporary approval. A life where you are not just liked, but loved for real. For everything you are, and for everything you're not. That's the life waiting for you when you stop being too nice. That's the life waiting for you when you choose to be whole. And that's a life worth building, one honest word, one brave boundary, one unapologetic moment at a time.